Good morning, everyone, and a very warm welcome to this motor transport webinar in association with Webfleet on AI in fleet management. As we said in the introduction, AI is already here. It's not just of the future, it's happening. And fleets who get on board of it definitely going to get a competitive advantage in terms of productivity, efficiency, and cost cutting. I'd like to thank Webfleet for hosting us here in their head office in Warwickshire and for supporting this webinar. I'd like to introduce my colleague Hayley Taylor, who's going to be pushing all the buttons, making sure that we all keep to time and that everything goes smoothly. The webinar is going to last roughly an hour, maybe a bit longer if we get lots of questions. Please feel free to use the Q&A in Zoom to put your questions to the panel. You can chat amongst yourselves in the chat function, but if you want to ask a question, please put it in the Q&A, and we'll be moderating the questions to the panel after the presentations. As I said, artificial intelligence is no longer a future concept. It is the fairy dust which is being sprinkled all over the industry, and it can even make donkeys fly, apparently. So we're here today to find out a bit more about the practical applications, where it can be used, and what impact it's going to have. While I'm doing the introductions, we're going to start with a poll, asking the audience what your attitudes towards AI at the moment. So while I introduce people, please have a look at the poll, make your answers, and then once I finish introductions, we'll look at the results. We're going to have three presentations. Stephen Lewis, Corporate Sales Manager at Webfleet, Matt Vass, Channel Director at MANTIS, and Liron Rosenberg, Chief Business Officer at Questar. We're also going to be joined by two other panelists, Alex Knowles, MD of Knowles Logistics, and Mark Cartwright from the Highways, National Highways, which are just... Mark Cartwright is Head of Commercial Vehicle Incident Prevention at National Highways. They're not going to be doing presentations, but they're going to be joining the panel discussion. They're going to get the privilege of asking the first couple of questions, and I will take over, and then we'll get some questions from the audience. So, as I said, the poll is going to be asking if you're using AI now, if you're considering it, or it's not yet crossed your radar. So, if you wouldn't mind just answering that question to get us started. And then we can go straight into the presentations once we've seen the answers. How's it going here? I can't see the results on my speech.
Right, we've got 3/4 of the people voted. Now, should we have a look?
Yeah, let's have a look, see what it says.
And there we go.
Interesting. Well, that's interesting. 6% of people are already using it. That's much higher than I expected, I must admit. And only 7% not yet given it any thought. So that's a very high level of engagement, I must admit. Very, very interesting in that. Okay, without further ado, we're going to get into our presentation. So, Stephen, please take it away.
Hopefully, see the slides.
Everyone been a moment? We'll just get one. There we go.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Dave. So this presentation, hopefully 5-10 minutes, just on how we at Webfleet are turning the data we're getting from vehicles into some practical actions that our customers can use using AI. So really, historically, what Webfleet is, leading European telematics provider, over 25 years experience in the industry, kind of looking at vehicle visibility, safety and maintenance of the vehicle, compliance, productivity, and a lot more recently sustainability, and a lot of data coming back from EV, not just van but in truck as well, and in sustainability, alternative fuels and areas like that. Obviously, we generate a lot of data looking at these insights, so we're trying to use AI to make the kind of experience better for our customers and end users. So before we get into it, we did a bit of a questionnaire out to 800 fleet decision makers last year, just looking at how AI was impacting them currently and how they thought AI would impact them into the future. And I think if you look at biggest impact expecting from AI was route planning, but also driver safety. And these are kind of high numbers that almost 97% of all those respondents expected AI to impact their operations significantly in the next 5 years. So our customers, our future customers are expecting AI. We just need to be there to deliver what our customers are expecting. So if we look at a truck from our point of view, this is what we call the connected truck. This is kind of gives you an idea of the levels of data and levels of information that we're able to get back from a truck today. And it's quite in depth, ranging from remote tacho download to fuel reporting, maintenance reporting, even into the trailer for EBPMS and TPMS. So we gathering lots and lots of data all of that time that truck and trailer is out on the road, and all of that is being ingested into our database, and we're displaying it to a customer. So you can imagine from our customer's point of view, using historically dashboards and reporting being generated, emailed out. There's a lot of information that is being generated, but there's also a lot of information that could be missed. If you're not in the system, if you're not utilizing it, if you're not seeing it every day, and you're not living and breathing what these systems generate, then there could be lots of nuggets of information there in the database that customers can't see. And it's our role as telematics providers to make that experience better for our customers. So when we're generating this data, we still need to generate this data. We will add more data as we go forward. We need to make that data more meaningful. Okay, and we're on that journey. So what we have recently introduced is the Webfleet Fleet Advisor, which is kind of one step forward from our porting engines on our dashboard. And this is really where our customers and Webfleet users can just ask our system questions. What do they need to see? So instead of having to build a dashboard or build a report to get that information or think about what they might need, they can clearly just ask the platform information they want. So in these examples, driving scores from our platform over the last 5 weeks, highest OptiDrive score, which is our driver scoring platform, who's got the best score, and show me some trend data over the previous months as well. So that can be days, weeks, months, or even years back of data. We can just ask the system to generate this for us. And that makes these things very quick. So instead of having to know how the system works to generate reports or know how the system works to generate dashboards, we can just ask the system questions, which makes it a much better user experience and makes the system use more, because we don't have to train customers as much. Customers don't have to remember how to do things. We all know how to ask questions. People are doing it every day with ChatGPT and Copilot and things like that. So we're just an extension of how the world is changing, going from asking Google to asking ChatGPT or whatever it might be. Okay. So, but that's the first start, right? So AI, a lot more that they can do within the telematics platform. And we've kind of split it into 3 pillars of how we see AI being integrated into Webfleet. So at the moment, instant actionable insights. I think that's where we are at the moment, where, again, repeating myself, the customer can ask the platform questions and the platform can give those insights back straight away. Then what we need to do in the second stage is we need to give them strategic recommendations. So we need the AI to monitor our customers' fleets for them on their behalf and make suggestions on what they should do in real time. So look at historical data, the AI can learn what our customers are interested in based on other historical questions that they've asked before, and they can give some recommendations. Also based on other customers' actions as well, what other customers are looking to achieve. We know what those fleets are, we can give them recommendations. Okay, so the system's just there working in the background saying this is what we need. And then we need to get to time-efficient automation, which is the next stage. Okay, so this is where the telematics platform is taking over those things that fleet managers need to do. And the real example it might be is talking about maintenance, creating work orders, having conversations with drivers about their driving style, changing routing, whatever it might be. The AI can start to do this automatically. So we're not reliant on someone sat there in the middle, even from a strategic recommendation point of view, understanding what the platform is saying and getting that message out to the people have a real impact. The AI can start to take over from that as well. So that's where we need to get to. So actually, the interaction with the system is not a manager anymore, really, but the system is sitting there and the system is interacting with the end users directly. And don't get me wrong, we do that kind of at the moment with driver feedback in our system, where we're telling drivers about driving events, speeding, infringements, idling, which has been done historically in telematics in the past. But this is going really intelligently into that and actually in the moment, and recommendations weekly, monthly, whatever it might be, into different parts of the business, because we see that with all of the data that I showed in the connected truck. Telematics is hitting so much more part of the business than we ever used to. Just used to be fleet managers and it was easy. But now when we deploy a telematics solution into our customers, we're having to deal with lots more departments due to the level of data we're ingesting. Okay, so that's where we see AI going. And also, we can use AI in a different way as well. And this is something we're working on in the background. And this is something that's been asked by our customers for a long time. And this is about benchmarking. So you can think, I said previously, we've got 25 years experience, we've got more than 1 million connected vehicles in our database. So we have a lot of data, a lot of historical data, a lot of understanding of customers' fleets across globe, really. So what we can start to do is, as part of the actual actionable insight, is we can start benchmarking customers, not against themselves. More quite insular when you're running a fleet, because you're just you're measuring yourself against yourself, really. So our MPG or whatever it might have been last week was this, and we want it to be this, and so on and so forth. But what we can look to do across anything, what it might is, okay, that's what you're achieving, but what are your peers achieving? And the AI can go through all of this data, because the AI can see what type of vehicles you're running, when you're running these vehicles, what types of jobs you're doing, what road networks you're running on, what time of day you're running on, and bring all of that information into our system. And then we can relay some benchmarking data back into you based on, okay, how you operate your vehicles, what you do with your vehicles, the weight they carry, all of those types of things. This is how you kind of reflect to your peers. Okay, and this is something we've that isn't, miles into the future. We're working on this, and this will be something we'll be delivering. And this is a real game changer, because this is what customers have always asked for. It's great to look at myself, it's great to measure myself against myself, and it's great to look at improvements. But what are my peers doing? What are customers of yours doing that run similar fleets to me? And we're able to deliver that now, so we can really start to change people. So when we see good fleets, we can get them in the right direction. Okay, so lots of different things we're doing with AI in terms of giving information out to users, but also using it to look at our data and give real actionable insights to our customers. Okay.
Fantastic. Thank you, Stephen. Over to you, Matt.
Hi everyone. So yes, Matthew Vass, I'm Channel Director here at MANTIS. For those of you who don't know about us, our mission, we're out there like many, just creating safer, more efficient fleets is pretty much the goal of many fleet technology companies out there. We're doing that by really focusing on a sort of a dynamic set of risk intelligence solutions, and we're doing that through advanced multi-cameras brought into the platform. But we really focus on the risk element side of it. So we work with a lot with insurance companies and various other things. We're HQ in Belfast, and we've got customers in the UK, Republic of Ireland, and now going into the USA. So Stephen touched on it briefly there. This is kind of our observations of the market and what's going to kind of fuel our AI development as we go forward. I've been in the industry best part of 10 years now, and I've spoken to hundreds and hundreds of different fleets operators, every different industry type. And data very quickly became the new sales battleground. Whenever a salesperson would be in there, it's more data, more data, more data. What's the new thing? More data, more data. And it all looked great on paper. But I think what very quickly happened is fleets became completely overloaded. Stephen said, you've got so many different more departments and data coming into the business, but if people don't really understand, exactly what data they really need, and actually more importantly have the time to implement it, you're not going to get the result out the back end that you require. So, this is the big problem: the data overload. Fleets not having the time and resources really to sit down, manage, and actually impart the data into the business. And data without action is no return on investment. Fleets are spending a huge amounts of money in telematics, camera systems, other fleet technologies, and they really need to be tracking the return on investment they're getting from it. If these technologies, if they're properly implemented, they should be minimum cost neutral. but it's certainly, if not saving you more money. That's kind of what the pitch is at the start. People always ask me, if I put cameras in, will my insurance costs go down? As much as I'd love to say yes out of the box, it's dependent on you and how you use the data. We'll obviously do our bits and the other providers will, but ultimately it's up to you and what you do with that. So that's kind of like the overview, and it's still there. A lot of great fleets being super proactive, and they have the resources, but an awful lot as well, liking the idea of it, wanting to get on board with the journey, but either haven't got the time, resources, or the understanding really to implement it. And really, this is one of the most exciting uses of AI, actually, that I've sort of seen coming in. As Stephen touched on what they're doing in Webfleet in terms of the analysis. And this is kind of where I see the future of AI going. So in the camera market, the first real advent of AI became the driver detection. So the mobile phone uses, the fatigue, distraction, seatbelt, that kind of good stuff. Very quickly, I think it got a little bit out of control. You're suddenly getting like 14 parameters of AI, eating, drinking, all these other bits. It's probably a little bit overkill. For the majority of fleets, most of your incidents for driver behavior are caused by speeding, distraction, or impairments. Include fatiguing with that. So if you get control of just those three things, you're going to have a huge, impact on your fleet. Do you need another 10 driver-facing AI parameters on top of that? Probably not. But this is kind of where we really see the AI, certainly in the camera side of things, going. So yes, we've got the driver-facing AI. Drivers, love it or hate it. It's there, it's a tool, but actual vehicle vision is what it's really coming into, particularly with the connected multi-camera, actually having a more programmable AI. So actually having AI that you can program to alert more than what the driver's doing, but actually alert the driver, around the vehicle. But you could have full detection. You could have, people start to see the PPE detection for some fleets. Are people wearing the correct safety wear? There's one of 100 different things you could actually customize an AI for, and that's where we're certainly looking into, is having a more customizable AI experience on the vehicle per fleet. We then go into the driver co-pilot. So again, the driver coaching, the in-cab alerts, that's been around for a while. It's not the be-all and end-all. It's a piece of the puzzle. You still need to have the fleet operator engaged. You still need to have the training programs in there. You still need to have the analytics going on. You can't just rely on the system to do everything yourself with the driver. It's a tool and a piece of the puzzle. But again, that needs to get more intelligent. Drivers get very quickly fatigued with the overuse of alerts. They start ignoring them if they're not being, followed up on. And really that sort of more intelligent in-cab coaching. So as Stephen said, looking at trends, actual individual trends. So driver face recognition, it's picking up who the driver is and say, right, actually based upon their last 10 trips, this is what I need to be looking out for. I'm going to coach the driver on these things, whether it's speeding or it's the phone use, and actually score them on that. And also the gamification side, so the automatic creation of the league tables and the rewards processes for, that should be happening autonomously once it's been set up for the actual fleet operator as well. And then the final piece, that real fleet supervision, the automated analysis, trying to do as much of that heavy lifting for fleets, taking all this data, refining it, getting it into that kind of paint by numbers. These are the things and problems you're having in your fleets. But data's at the point now, we've got so much. And again, I'm doing a lot of work with insurance companies. Theoretically in the future, you get to the point of pulling that risk data into the insurance company and almost having a dynamic kind of premium, that almost could change quarterly if you wanted to, rather than having to wait, a year on premiums increases. You can actually share that data and have it dynamically reporting into your loss ratio figures and all that sort of thing. So there's a lot more that can be done with, linking up the ecosystems between the various fleet technology providers and other people like insurance providers and all the other bits. So it's super exciting. And I think that's the biggest application of AI is in that analysis and really helping fleets get that kind of return on investment. And the reason what we're doing on there, we're really focusing on simplification. We try and strip things back to their more basic. So, simplifying the data, is look at just the data you need and is really relevant to your business, and simplifying the displaying and reporting of that data. The AI, of course, can be very complex in the background, but that's all happening in the background for the reporting. The data integrity, again, making sure if we're simplifying the data, really focusing on what it is, making sure it's really high quality, the filtering out false positive events, making sure that everything is relevant, the collision detection technologies now that's coming with the AI sort of 360 cameras, making sure that the most severe stuff is being flagged up straight. And then really so again, to use example with insurance, collision technology. So one of the big issues we see with fleets is sometimes the time it's taken to report collisions to insurers. I did an analysis for a company, it was over 8 days. Imagine if the AI is picking up the collision, grabbing the telematics data, putting all the context and everything, drawing up the actual collision report, and then automatically getting that to your insurance company. That's taking your reporting from days down into hours, which for those who know, FNOL, first notification loss, is a huge advantage. Cost reduction for the actual collision. So these are kind of the concepts we're really taking into our AI development based on sort of the many conversations we've had over the years with our customers. And yeah, that's kind of a little overview of what we're doing.
Fantastic. Thanks, Matt. Over to Liron.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm Liron, as Chief Business Officer of Questar. Let me start by telling you a bit about Questar. So we are a company focused on total fleet health management. I can say we're kind of like a hybrid company because from the one hand, we are like an AI startup, really focusing on the AI aspect of fleet health management, like our collaboration with Webfleet, in which they are the telematics provider, and we are like the engine and the brains that is focusing on health management. On the other hand, we are a 20 years old company, experienced with a lot of knowledge around automotive. And we've been here since the connected car started. So everything is based on a deep understanding and knowledge of the industry. And we really believe that AI is not, it's a lot of data, like my colleague said before, but it's a lot of expertise and understanding the type of industry that you're working in. So actually, when Steve and Josh from Webfleet invited me to participate in this webinar, I started thinking, okay, what's the angle? Where did it all start? And immediately I thought about the horse and carriage and the fact that actually fleet health management and vehicle health management, it was always here. Started with the horse and carriage and all the way through transportation and preventive maintenance. It was always here, and it's always about two very important KPIs: improving uptime and availability, and reducing cost. And this is what we are all looking for. And we really see that AI is like a natural evolution on improving the way that you do fleet management and giving the fleets better and better tools to manage the system. You need to have a good system in order to succeed, and this is the technology behind it. If I look at the evolution, again, we really see it as an evolution. In some cases, AI is like it's more of like one cut change. In this case, it's really step by step, and I think it goes very well with everything that was said before me. We're starting with the telematics, what is the vehicle doing, everything that Stephen talked about, and then moving to the remote diagnostics aspect. So we have a partnership with Webfleet. In that partnership, these two aspects are actually provided by Webfleet, saying what is wrong with the vehicle. But like Stephen said, there is a lot of data, and we are all familiar, a lot of DTC codes and alerts and fault codes. And it's about knowing what to do with it and when to pay attention and how to prioritize. And that takes us to the next level. And the next level is the predictive or the proactive. Identify risks at an early stage, pattern identification, and then making sure that you take the corrective actions on time before the breakdown, before the actual deterioration. But it doesn't stop there. Then you continue to the prescriptive aspects. So it's not only you have a problem with the engine, you need to fix it, or in the transmission. It's also root cause analysis and recommendations on what should be the next steps, and also the level of risk. So understanding I can have two vehicles with similar behaviors, but the level of risk needs to be considered in order to prioritize maintenance, in order to prioritize repair. And like Stephen was talking, the future is going to the agentic AI. It's no longer only a recommendation, only insights. It's also do things for me, schedule maintenance, open work orders. It's more hands on deck. The team is growing using AI and using proactive actions. As we all know, when we change technology, it's not only about technology. It's always people, process, technology, right? The basics. And really the work processes are changing. This kind of technology, and when you have a clear and simple visibility over what is happening in your fleet, you can move from the traditional reactive flow, experience a breakdown, and then the long repair times, or on the other way, like doing a lot of PMIs in order to avoid the breakdowns, you move towards a more optimized process in which you detect risk at an early stage, you get prepared, you can bundle preventive maintenance with repairs and have a much more optimized operations. So it's about process changes, it's about people skills. And I think, again, when using the chatbots and the agents, it's a different kind of world, and it's a different kind of skills that people need on their day-to-day in order to work with the system. But on the other hand, it's making it as simple as possible for the user, so they can really focus on what they need to do and what's most important right now. And also, it can evolve into impacting regulation and compliance because this visibility is so meaningful. Okay, so a little bit of the technical stuff, but this is not really technical and it's easy to understand. My main message here is that AI is not just, okay, I have one AI model which is giving recommendation. It's like a full stack solution, an AI framework. Everything is relying on AI capabilities, and it's built levels, one on top of the other. So you start with the data, like we said, huge amounts of data, OEM DTCs, telematics data, raw parameters, everything together, and it's a lot of noise. So you need to know how to normalize the data, streamline the data, look at all the brands and models and put it on one structure in order for the system to work multi-brand, multi-system. And then on top of that, you have the algorithms that for machine learning and AI algorithms that are used for early detection and pattern identification. So really the insights, the interesting insights from the data. On top of that, we are doing smart scoring. So people are very well familiar with smart scoring from driver behavior. We are actually doing smart scoring on the mechanical state of the vehicle. So you get a very simple overview of what's your current situation. What is the current health score of your fleet? What is the health score of a specific vehicle? And zooming into a specific system level, so you know what is the root cause, what needs to be done. And then an additional layer is the large language model. So taking all of this, but really putting it into simple words, text that the user can understand, explanation, root cause analysis, recommendations, but in a very simple language. Another fascinating thing that we are working on is what we call the foundation model, which is like a neural network for vehicle data. Think about it, if ChatGPT is the language model, we are building the vehicle parameters model, an expert model that knows how to read vehicle data and really quickly onboard additional vehicle, quickly understand what is going on. So this is talking about the future, but it's coming up very fast. And then when we look at the user interface, again, it's all changing. It's AI that speaks your language, and it's from, I think, 3 angles. We know the chatbots, everything that makes it very easy, questions and answers. Then you have the AI agents that are doing the work for you, but additionally, the integration layer is based on AI. So my agent can talk to Steven's agents and to Matt's agents, and they can all collaborate. And eventually in one platform, you can get the insights and you can get all this deep understanding integrated into one platform and consumed by a single interface. Okay, that's the next one. So eventually it's all about having a very simple user interface and for making the user's life easy. being able to intelligently prioritize, clearly see the trend in the fleet, clearly see the trend in the vehicle, what happened in the past, what are the risks, what they should be doing, and then also using the AI tools and the recommendations to drive decisions. Yeah, that's it. Thank you very much. And if there are any questions, also my email is there. Feel free to.
Thank you, Liron. Before I get our other panelists, Matt and Mark involved. Sorry, Alex, I'm getting mixed up with Matt. But I've got one question I'd put to all of you on behalf of our readers, the fleet operators. I still don't really get what is the difference between AI and just a very clever algorithm. And are we getting close to the point where AI will take control rather than just providing information out of all the data? Is AI going to take over fleet management at some point in your experience, or is it basically going to be a human being in charge and AI being a tool? I don't still quite understand what is AI, where are we going with all this? So just take it in order, please. You just want to your view. What is AI? What does it mean in the real world?
Well, an algorithm is a static kind of measure, right? So you put data in and you go through the algorithm, you get a set results. And the only thing that ever changes is the data where AI is learning all the time, and it's learning from the data you're putting in. So it's not just taking the data and just doing the same mathematical equations across it, which is what an algorithm does. This is taking the data, learning from it, and giving you different results, and trying to actually push you in a different way. It's basically the two different things where it's constantly learning and constantly adapting to the data it is receiving, and not just static.
But is it going to want to take over at some point, or is it just going to be a tool human beings use? Or are we heading towards a world where AI is going to run the world?
So don't think so. I think, look, it's the AI there is a tool to assist you. You know, it's learning based on what you're asking it to learn. It's not sat there learning itself just for the learning's sake. It's taking the data that you're giving it and it's learning in the way that you want it to learn, as long as you control how you want it to learn and the outputs you want. So there's control. And AI is designed to help you with your role, not overtake you.
And also, Matt, as well as explaining what it means with all the cameras, who actually owns all this data? Because the driver, okay, you're not going to name names because we know GDPR, but who's going to own all this data which you're gathering? Is it the operator? Is it you? Is it the vehicle?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, the customer's data, so they have control over it if they request deletion and things like that. We are a data processor, and that's covered by all the GDPR requirements and everything in that. So obviously, the data, security is obviously a huge thing. So making sure everything's up on AWS and Azure and all the correct security protocols, super important. Making sure the device for cameras in particular on the vehicle, it's all fully encrypted, it's all locked down and everything like that. You can't just go and pull it and just plug it into it and see it. So, but absolutely, the operator owns the data, and we say how long we store data for before we destroy it. But obviously, if the customer rang up and said, can you get rid of this? Can you do that? We're obliged to do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, the big issue we have, Liron, when we talk to traffic commissioners and a lot of operators the vehicles get pulled over for a check, there's a technical defect, and they say, well, good, it's not my fault, I contract out all my maintenance. Is this tool going to help operators to keep track of the vehicle maintenance to avoid fewer on the road failures, do you think? Is this part of what you're aiming for?
Yes, definitely. And I think there are two aspects for it. You have the fleet as a customer, right, that can really supervise what's going on and understand what is going on. And also the leasing companies and the main benefit a lot of such a tool in the vehicle, being able to know what's happening at any point and make sure that the vehicle is used in the optimized manner. So there are two users actually to this kind of solution.
Okay, I'm going to turn to our panelists. This is take all the trouble to come here. I really appreciate it. Alex, with a poll to start with, 63% of people said they're already using AI. If you were answering on behalf of Knowles Logistics, where would you be on that poll? Are you toe in the water, dived all the way in?
We definitely haven't dived all the way in, fortunately. But what we're starting to see, and what's great to see with the presentation so far, is the embedding of AI agents within software. So from our perspective, we'd like to see that rolled out across all the technology platforms that we use. Because I think where we are at the moment is it will assist operators in speed of decision making, getting better information. For years, we've had loads and loads of data from all these systems, and we've harnessed single-digit percentages of what we could do. So we can harness that information a lot better with AI, and what might have taken days, weeks in terms of analyst time becomes minutes. So that's probably the most exciting thing I think at the moment for us with AI.
We are the research that Webfleet did earlier saying the two main focuses are going to be route optimization and driver safety. Would you agree with those two?
I would, yeah. From a TMS perspective, I think route optimization, load building, even down to driver allocation, will be the main focuses of where I see the most benefit for a transport operator.
Okay, Mark, what's the role of AI in national highways? What do you think it's going to do for you?
I guess there's two main areas for me, Steve. Is, as you know, my team is fundamentally judged on a single KPI, which is the number of people who manage to kill and hurt themselves on our roads. So whilst I hear all the stuff about vehicle management and route optimization and all the rest of it, I'm always coming at it from this kind of safety nuance. And what we know is that the great majority of crashes are caused by driver behavioural issues. It might be the truck driver, it might be the non-truck driver, and what's going on around them. So I'm interested in the kind of camera stuff there. But we know the great majority of crashes are caused by what we call the four known unknowns. We know that in the mix, working out the proportionality is a bit of a challenge in there. So the easiest way to think of it is a four-circle Venn diagram. It's distraction, which we've spoken about, it's fatigue, what we've spoken about, it's impairment, and it's medical conditions, particularly in the HGV cohort, where we all know we've got an ageing demographic of drivers in there. So for me, one of the things I'm really interested in thinking of something that Liron was saying is, in the vehicle journey, you were talking about how we identify what the vehicle is doing, how we identify what's wrong with the way that the vehicle's behaving, and what do we do about it. And it's exactly that model I'd really want to lift and shift over into the driver behavioural pieces. How's the driver behaving? How are they reacting? Can we intervene? Can it be a proactive reaction rather than an active event reaction? It's that kind of piece I think has got massive potential benefits for us all in terms of road safety. The second part of it, and it's not anything that my team's directly involved with, but of course we've got a whole set of digital geeks back at National Highways looking at the data we're actually capturing from the roads. So it's in terms of traffic flows, it's in terms of temperatures, surface condition, etc., etc., etc. And I know a big part of that project is moving towards how we actually share that data with fleets in pretty much real time, so they can react to that kind of stuff. So there's kind of two areas. There's the more generic, what can we offer out to the technology providers, and also from my very selfish point of view is what we can harness to reduce casualties and fatalities on our network.
You use one of my favourite phrases there, Mark, the unknown unknowns. And one thing I was struck by, you're saying using AI, you can interrogate the data, you can ask it a question. Will AI get to the point where you don't need to ask it a question, it will proactively highlight something it's found which it doesn't like? The unknown unknown, the operator doesn't even aware of. Is that the next step rather than you asking it a question? Yeah.
That's absolutely. I think what you said there about driver behaviour, right, is that when a customer has an accident or an incident on the road, we've had our driver behaviour metrics for years, right? And I think you can always look back at that driver's history and think, this is not a surprise that this happened, but there was just, was there the time, was there the inclination, was there the desire to look at that data proactively, to have the conversation with the driver to stop that happening? And that's the bit we miss. So with AI and that, where we're trying to get to is being very proactive with the data. That's the point we want to get to, because the AI can predict what's actually going to happen. We can look at it and predict it, but we just don't have time to do it. So if the AI can step in and say, look, we've seen this driving behaviour, this is what's going to happen in the future, because we always see it, even if we have a good driver and they've been a good driver for the past month, but they get in a vehicle on a Monday morning and their driver behaviour is terrible, and guess what, they have an incident in the afternoon, but no one's got time to see that was happening. But if the AI can intervene very quickly and say, this is not ordinary, this is unusual behaviour from this driver, we think something needs to happen, and be very proactive, and that's where it's really going to have an impact on driver behaviour.
I've got to say, that's absolutely music to our ears, because one of the things, I think it's probably as I'm getting old and getting grumpy, but one of the things that really does grind the gears is that the clarity of hindsight.
Yeah.
Oh, I knew, that was bound to happen.
Yeah.
Well, if you could identify if it was bound to happen in hindsight, why couldn't you identify it was bound to happen in foresight and stop it happening? So absolutely.
You can see it all the time. We drive behaviour metrics all the time. If you put our telematics system into a new customer's never had it before, they can probably tell me that where their drivers are going to rank out of their drivers. Matches, you need to do something with it, and it's people on there need to help. Yes.
I think that another very important factor is actually the financial factor, okay? And what is like, we have a KPI that we are actually something we are working on right now of cost of ignoring, of cost of no repair. So the being able to highlight, if I don't fix the problem right now, what is the risk that I'm at? How much will it cost me if I wait for 1 week? And then potentially if I reach the breakdown rather than taking care of an issue when it was early. So I think another very important aspect is the financial and economical.
See, I think a very valuable role of AI would link the telematics data with the camera data, because that'll tell you what happened. Camera, either facing in or facing out, might tell you why it happened.
Yeah.
The classic example is harsh braking.
Mm-hmm.
You know, was a driver dozing off and didn't see the zebra crossing, or did a child run out in front of the vehicle? You know, you need to know not just what happened, why. And is that, can your two systems now talk to each other so you can get an overall view of an incident?
Exactly. You know, telematics has got better at detecting these things, but ultimately we say the cameras is the truth of the vehicle. You know, the camera doesn't lie. It gives you the absolute complete context in what's happening up to the point of that incident, but also at that point of incident as well. So, you know, the driver recognition, you know, we hear about drivers getting beaten with a stick for saying they're doing something wrong. Actually, if they've done a harsh braking to avoid a collision, avoid someone running out in front of them, it happens more often than you think. That's a good thing. You know, that's actually something the driver should be praised for, not penalised against the driver score because a G-force was detecting a harsh or almost collision-like event. So that's where the telematics data can do its best, but the cameras will add that clarity and context to say, right, okay, this should technically on this score penalise a driver. Actually, with the camera data, let's put that into a positive. Actually, then, you know, incentivise, reward, praise driver, whatever it may be.
Alex, I'd like to ask you, as the operator in the room, in the good old days of A to driver scores, some operators I've talked to say, I've turned it off because there's such a massive driver shortage. I can't even get rid of G drivers, never mind the C drivers. So, do you have the bandwidth in terms of driver selection to act on this data and say, Stephen said, you know, even before you get there, you're probably going to know who your drivers are and go out and have the most accidents and don't get very good fuel consumption and things like that. But are you sort of so restricted on the choice of drivers, good drivers, that in a way you just got to put up with some of the mediocre drivers out there?
I mean, there's no. Everyone knows that there's a issue with driver supply within in the UK at the moment, well across Europe as well. That has improved slightly since the driver shortage 3 or 4 years ago, but it's still probably going to rear its head again in the next couple of years. However, we do measure all of our drivers. We do pay a bonus based on performance scores. So I still think drivers want to be the best they can be, the majority of them, and the more technology that we can use and to assist them to get to the A score, if you like, then is a good thing.
I mean, one thing we're missing in a way is a lawyer, because I'm always fascinated to know if you get to know these unknown unknowns, are you legally obliged to act on them? Which is why I sometimes think some operators turn a blind eye, because if they don't know that Fred always falls asleep on a Monday afternoon because he's been out in the Raz all weekend, they don't want to know because they know they've got to stop Fred driving in the afternoon. So we haven't got a lawyer to explain the liability, but I think there is a certain now, among the TCs in particular, a certain awareness that operators have to take a more active interest in the mental, physical well-being of their drivers. And if the guy's constantly dozing off in the afternoons, you've got to change your shift pattern or something like that. Do you worry that you've got so much information that you're constantly having to act on it and, you know, change the shift patterns to make sure that the drivers are all right? And I don't know, how what's your action point that you get in? What do you tell the operators to do with all this information?
I mean, just actually, you know, it was a couple of years ago now, so obviously AI was quite as far along as it was, but we actually had a great example of this. So we had a driver who historically had been very good with our customer. All of a sudden started triggering fatigue events on camera, and that's coming in. It wasn't acted upon as quickly as possible, and they actually went on to have a collision. Thank God, was hurt. And actually, when they got into why it happened, so this perfectly good driver was all of a sudden having these events, and they'd actually had some problems at home. You know, there was divorce and everything going on. It happened very quickly. They weren't sleeping. So that's a complete well-being issue. That's that's a good employee that fortunately through personal circumstances things happen. And actual fleet operator is really sympathetic to it. They said, okay, right, we should have probably picked up on this, but they had to come out of the vehicle, they popped into another part of the department, they got through, and that's great, because that's where you get the driver support. It's not just to say the stick to beat them with, it's assisting them. And I suppose if you fast forward that a couple of years now, it would have picked up that behaviour trend a little bit more and got a bit more proactive. And that's what we've got in the kind of systems in place now. So that's the benefit of the very quick advancement of that. Stephen said, recognizing those patterns in behaviour. If someone's gone very good and suddenly gone off a cliff, what's the reason for it? Could be 1,000 different reasons. Driving styles change. Not all of them always someone's fault. Just personal circumstances or whatever it may be around that. So, that's where I think particularly with AI and the driver engagement really comes in when they know it's reliable data, accurate data. They know they're not just being monitored for every bad thing under the sun. It's reasonable, and then makes them accountable. I think that's where you get particularly with driver engagement, driver shortages coming in. So yeah, totally.
I think that fits into a broader piece as well. I mean, one of the things we talk about a lot is having that psychologically safe environment where people do feel empowered to say, look, I'm having a bad time at home, can you cut me a bit of slack? Or whatever it happens to be in that space. And I had a call, it's probably a couple of years ago now, when we started talking about this topic at various presentations. There's a guy who ran a fleet of vans for Housing Association. And he said he'd be really proud of me. He said, I realised the other day when I was being asked to donate to a collection for one of my lads who just had a couple of twins. I thought, he ain't going to get any sleep, is he? He said, so we brought him in and said, look, can you tell me if you're getting fatigued, if it's getting too much for you? I can't make any promises, but if I can cut you a bit of slack in terms of keeping you closer to base, or I'd rather do that than having to come and unwrap you from around a lamppost somewhere. And it's exactly that kind of attitude. The technology is a fantastic tool in that space, but it's also got to be about the culture and the ethos within that organisation to react and adapt to it as well. I think.
Exactly. And you touched on it, the cost of doing nothing as well. You mentioned about ignoring the data. The problem is in this sector, the worst incidence is someone dies. Multiple people die. That's the reality of it, on the roads. And that's so saying, oh, let's just turn a blind eye to it, I don't want to know, it doesn't really work because the consequences are so severe. And as I said, the cost as well. The great thing about these technologies, if you improve safety, you save money. Yeah. They're intrinsically linked. So it's completely in interest, not just from safety of vehicles, safety of the public, but it will also, improve operationally the business.
Well, is there any data on the causes of accidents on the trunk roads? I mean, for example, I was driving up here yesterday on the M27, and there's 2 lanes closed, high shoulder closed. And when I got to the accident, it was a 6x2 unit, no trailer, no other cars involved, ploughed into the barrier, cut down a few trees. Chances are the guy fell asleep. I didn't thought it was a foreigner. Do you have any idea what the role of driver fatigue and distraction is on the trunk road accidents?
We know that it contributes to a significant percentage, as does distraction, as does impairment, and very often they're combined. We've got a distracted and an impaired driver at the same time, or whatever mix you like with it. The challenge is actually capturing that data at the scene of a crash. And one of the things I'm interested in the kind of technology that you guys are bringing, actually, you can help inform us as to what's causing crashes out there. The challenge we have is the data that comes back is captured by police at the scene of crash. And it's very often there before there's any kind of robust incident investigation, etc., etc. So, and I promise you, this isn't having a pop at our colleagues in blue. They do a fantastic job, and that thin blue line is spread even thinner than people can imagine most of the time. But when we look at the data tells us by some significant margin the most frequent cause of an incident is fail to observe, which, to be blunt, really doesn't help me very much, other than the fact that with any luck they weren't aiming at the other vehicle. And we know in there they'll do distraction, fatigue, medical conditions, all the rest of it. So it's quite difficult to get a handle on it, which is why we refer to them as the known unknowns. But we know they're in there, and anything we can do to help us identify that through technology, we're also very much encouraging businesses to investigate their incidents if they're near misses, or to be fair, I think they ought to be called near hits rather than near misses, but they're near hits for near misses to inform the broader industry of the issues to look out for and the remedies to those. And I always say this when I get an opportunity, if there was a single silver bullet I would like to fire, it would be about making on-road incidents real reportable in the same way as on-site incidents are. I think that would concentrate fleets' minds of all fleets, not just HGVs, but vans and cars as well, fairly significantly on the level of risk involved on the road. Is health and safety issue, not a fleet management issue most of the time.
There's a very good question here. It's got a very useful phrase, overbearing micromanagement based on all data, and how you convince drivers this is a safety aid for them and for the road users, not a question of disciplinary action. Because I like to think of it a few years ago when tachographs were first introduced, the spine in the cab, drivers hated them. If you said to drivers now, we'll take the tachographs out and you can drive 24 hours if the management want you to, they'd all go, no, you're crazy. You know, it's seen as a safety aid now, it's protecting drivers. I don't think we're quite there at that stage yet with driver-facing cameras. So I don't know how we can overcome that and get people to understand that the actions are going to flow from all this AI interaction with the data. It's not going to be to beat them over the head with a stick, but to actually improve road safety. I don't know how you can cross that bridge with the technology you're using.
It's funny if we've seen this exact question. So obviously, you know, back in the sort of specifically the cameras, it all started with dash cams, and that's forward facing and driver facing. So you've got 30% of your vehicle, 40% of your vehicle covered, and you've got the driver in there. And that's seen as, well, it's a bit limited because anything happens on the rest of the vehicle, you don't see it, but it's very much seen that kind of spine in the cab. That's all it is. And the driver just sees that as kind of a negative thing, even if they are capturing things that they shouldn't be doing. You know, they still see that. You know, when you went into the multi-camera, yes, you'll still have that driver camera piece, but all of a sudden you've now got the cameras around the vehicle. Now I've got a visibility aid. Now I know left and right, I can get my cameras, I can see my load, I can see the reversing, fewer load speed impacts. That's getting me in less trouble at work. It's making my life easier. They actually see it as a much more of a benefit. Yes, it still has that can have the in-cab piece, but it's part of a collective solution of safety. But especially with multicam as well, all of a sudden now you've got a shield of protection around your driver's vehicle against all of the accusations and fraud and all these things that people throw at your vehicle. So, you know, could accuse your driver of, you know, being rude, or because there was a blocked access that stopped them doing a delivery, or, you know, they're being assaulted, or, you know, cash for crash claims and all that thing that's going to cause a lot of stress and headache for your driver. If you've got that complete visibility, it's just going to be, no, that wasn't us, go away, leave it alone. And that's all of a sudden, again, the drivers get on much better board with that. You know, certainly from us, we're absolving as many drivers of wrongdoing as we are catching doing it. It's nearly 50-50 in the types of footage we're getting on there. So that's, you know, having that more holistic 360 view is definitely more beneficial to drivers than just having it in cab.
Alex, can I ask you, what's your view on driver-facing cameras? Have you trialing them, using? I mean, General Safety Regulation 2, when it comes into force later this year, is going to require driver-facing distraction cameras, but it's only going to alert the driver, not going to send a signal back to head office. What is your experience with?
We are using them, and I think in terms of getting the acceptance from the driver, it's about showing them, demonstrating to them that it can exonerate you, and it can save your life. The examples that we spoke about here about drivers who have tough times at home, it might not be normal for them to have sleep events or wake events while they're driving, but you know, things happen in life, and the fact that we can use these cameras to actually pick up changes in behavior and sit down with them and ask them what's going on, do you need some time off, etc., can actually save their life. So you know, I think it is a positive for the driver. I think it's more likely used to assist the driver than to performance manage a driver.
Have you seen any insurance benefits at all from the technology, the vehicle technology being installed? And do insurers recognise the fact, or is it simply based on you've got to get the rate of accidents down, then that's reflected in your premiums? Do they reflect proactive steps you're taking in the premiums before to see the accident rates come down?
From our experience, they like to see it, whether there's a direct correlation between implementing the technology and then reducing the premiums is another story. I think it's down to accident rate. So it's down to having the right technology, us using the data to bring down accidents, and then you see the insurance premiums coming down.
Fantastic. Liron, there's a brilliant question here for you. Very interesting. I wish I thought of this, but I can't go any further. You talked about using the data points with predictive maintenance. Will it tell you when the vehicle is no longer worth repairing, and it's, say, you know, it's done 1 million clicks? There's no point spending that money on the, you know, fixing the problems might happen. Just get rid of it. Is it get to that point?
That's actually a good question. Because we never thought about it as well. Down the end of the especially when you talk about commercial vehicles and you manage many different aspects. We are more looking at when is the right time to repair, right? Because you don't want to go into the workshop just for a minor fix. It's just a waste of downtime and availability. You want to be able to optimize and bundle the small repairs with the preventive maintenance, and then avoid the big repairs, avoid the breakdowns, and avoid situation in which you shouldn't, it's not worth repairing anymore. It's like when you talk about gamification, I also look at it sometimes like a game. It's like you have a green, amber, red, and then the critical situation, and you always want to fix things at an early stage. So you want to have you aspire to have a high health score and take care of issues when they're very early, and you will not get to the fires, you will not get to the breakdowns. That's that point.
This question is directed at you, Liron, but I'm going to ask it to all three of you. It's a very good question. What's the ROI on these systems, and can you demonstrate there's a payback within 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? Can you prove an
So
ROI?
the payment is really like almost immediate, right? What we see is an ROI of up to 30%, and you improve in maintenance costs. Also the same for downtime. And if you look, it's very simple. If you only take a downtime day cost, if we are able to reduce by 1 downtime day per truck per year, system is covered, the ROI is there. It's already much more than that. We all know how expensive it is that. If you add towing and special premiums or fixing outside your country, if you go to, like in Europe, if you go to another country and you have to fix something far away from your home base, also very expensive premiums. So I think it's not in the same level, like the saving potential and the cost of the solution.
Can you get the system on a pay-as-you-go basis, or do you have to have a massive six-figure upfront investment to get the thing installed, or can you just rent it as you go?
So we're a software as a service solution. It's also about the future and the integration and usage of data. We have our own hardware, but we are working with companies like Webfleet and OEMs to integrate into their own APIs and their own data, and then it's like switch on a button, and you can work with it, you can use it for a few months, and I promise you that you will not want to shut it down.
Puppy dog selling, they call it. You try it for a few weeks, and I can't live without this. Mantis, what's the ROI? And again, can you rent it rather than buy it all?
So again, absolutely, you can do both. You can buy it up front, or you can rent it on a monthly basis. Entirely up to you. So the thing that's interesting about cameras, you've got the extremes that come into it. So, one serious collision where you've proven you're not liable could pay for the whole system because you've got that visibility on it. But because you never know when they might happen, in terms of, they're looking at insurance premiums, improvements in loss ratios in particular, efficiency improvements or disputes, with customers and the time that saves and everything on that as well. Linking with the telematics, the driver behavior, and we know improving safety, then improves your fuel efficiency and everything like that. So depending on industry, you could be 12 months, return on investment, could be up to 18 months, depending how safe your fleet was originally and the impacts there. But you can very quickly, get money back on it. And certainly once you're hitting past year 2, and these systems are designed not to last 5 minutes, so they're designed to last 5 to 7 years. So, you're correcting your risk profile within the first sort of 12 to 18 months, and then you really get the benefit. But like I say, one serious incident, boom, it could pay for it straight away.
I mean, Steve, I suppose to a certain extent, the return on investment for any of these systems is how well the operator uses it. I mean, you can put it in, if no one turns it on,
Well,
you're not going to get many much benefit.
that's the point I was trying to actually make, right? So from a telematics point of view, it's very clear, our job is to increase is to have an impact on the bottom line, the operating costs of those vehicles, and to reduce the operating costs of those vehicles. Where on today's topic, where AI comes in, is the AI is there to make sure you get a better ROI or a quicker ROI, because it's looking at everything. You might miss some things if you're looking at day-to-day where you could have some. The AI is there to make wins. It's and you take action on those quickly. And so with AI, telematics always has a solid ROI, always has done, always will do, in my opinion. But with AI introduced, we'll get that quicker and we'll get a bigger ROI.
Okay, Alex, I'm going to direct this question at you. And another one of my favourite phrases in a question I can't make is common sense. Isn't transport all about using your common sense? And what is the role in AI in, interacting between human beings who know that Fred has to get home at 4 o'clock on a Friday to feed his mum's cat, and AI who just looks at the data and says, no, Fred's can work a full shift?
Common sense obviously has its role, but so does tech, and yeah, a lot of what we're doing is common sense, but having more data points, having more information available to make decisions, can only assist operators, and yeah, I think that's a case for both.
Another very good question here, really one for you, Stephen, and you, Liron. Can you identify the impact of driver behaviour on the state of the vehicle? That not only is a bad driver very bad with fuel efficiency, he makes the vehicle less reliable by the way it drives it. Or is the automation in the vehicle now with automatic gearboxes and so much driver assistance that the driver can't really wreck the truck unless he crashes it into a wall?
I think we can see that, right? Wear and tear on the vehicle is a general thing, impacted by how the vehicle is driven. Bridgestone, we're owned by Bridgestone, so we look at tyre wear and stuff like that, and TPMS on tyres and things like that. So if your walk around check wasn't done properly, if there's bits missed on the vehicle when you're doing your walk around check, that can have a direct impact further down the line. If we have accidents, if there's signals missing and we hit something or something like that, it can have a direct impact on the cost of that vehicle. But driver behaviour is more to do with wear and tear on the vehicle, brakes, tyres and things like that. But I also think from your point of view in terms of AI working to tell operators what they need to do, we also still see drivers driving vehicles with warnings on the dash, just ignoring them, keeping them going and things like that, where if we could tell operators what's going on in the vehicle, we can take that vehicle off the road before we do serious damage.
Definitely. And one of the things that we have that is quite unique is that we can produce our own events. And only in this, so it's not only all the data that it's adding more data into that in order to make the recommendations more accurate. And there is a specific type of events which is actually driver triggered events. So we call it mechanical skills. The way the driver operates the vehicle definitely impacts the wear and tear, but it can also impact transmission and other key components and the engine in the vehicle. So definitely these are events that influence the state of the vehicle, the mechanical state of the vehicle. So yes. The answer is yeah.
I mean, you mentioned driver walk-around checks. That's still something which a human being is expected to do in the morning. Is AI going to get to the point where it can do a vehicle check, its own vehicle check, without having a human being involved? Are we getting anywhere near a vehicle saying, I need something doing to me before I can even start it?
It's for me.
I think there's an element of a vehicle check we could probably do today to tell a driver what we think the situation of that vehicle is, what we think's wrong with it, and the driver's job is there to either confirm or deny what we're seeing. Right? I think we could do that today with the data we have from the vehicle. Now we're not doing that because the driver is responsible for the vehicle check. We're not, so the driver needs to confirm everything. But yeah, I think there is an element that we could take over. We know the tire pressure, for example. We know is there any warning lights on the dash, for example? We know those types of things. We also know previously what's happened to that vehicle on other vehicle checks that we could proactively know a driver.
That there are also companies today that are using AI, like I don't know if you're familiar with UVI. They have like this. It's an arch of cameras, and you simply drive through that, and that's your inspection. You get a full AI-based report for the vehicle inspection. So I think there are technologies that are replacing the driver.
Yeah.
I do think there was a key word that you used in your response there, Stephen, was the word responsible. So it's the same conversation that's going on with autonomous vehicles. Somewhere that responsibility has to lie, and that really isn't something that's been decided by the legislators or indeed any kind of court action against it. So that is a key word. So somebody somewhere, that responsibility must lie with somebody, whether it's using the hours, the tools to support it, whether it's Mark one eyeball check on the vehicle.
Yeah, there is a shift, right, that needs to take place, but I also think we could save a little bit of time by what's the point of sending a driver out loading a vehicle or doing a walk around check on a vehicle we know is going to fail. Because we can see it in the data. So just leave that one today. We know from the data we've seen from yesterday that it's not going to pass. So we'll just concentrate on something else.
Fantastic. Well, we're up to our hour, so I'm going to summarise now. Thank you very much indeed to all our panellists for their amazing contributions. Couldn't have done it without you. Really appreciate it. We're going to close with a final poll on what the audience's, I was going to say expectations, but I don't think that's the word we actually use, but which areas that our audience think AI is going to have the biggest impact on in the next 5 years. So if you can just turn your attention to the poll, please. Webfleet did some very similar research last year, so it's going to be interesting to compare if the areas are the same or changed. Absolutely fascinating. As I say, I'm quite an ignoramus when it comes to AI. I'm still curious to know where it's going to take us all. There's the second AI safety conference in India recently, and the predictions vary from it's going to save the world to destroy the world. So we're somewhere in the middle. But I think there's no doubt about it for fleet managers, a bit like electrification might not be every transport manager's favourite topic in the world, but it's something, if you're going to stay alive in the modern world, you're going to have to get your head around. There's no point burying your head in the sand and ignoring it. So I'm very, very happy to see the number of people engaged with today's webinar, because I think the phrase AI can either turn people off massively. I don't want anything like that, or, oh, that's interesting. I really need to get my head around it. So thank you very much indeed to Webfleet for putting it on with us. I really appreciate it. Thank you all to our speakers, and thank you to Mark and Alex for your contributions. And thank you to anybody who asked a question. There's some very good questions there. Really, really helped me out. So that's brilliant. So let's have a see what areas we think are going to be the most important as a result of AI in the future. Route planning, still top, which was similar to the outcome. Driver safety, again, second. So not things that haven't moved on massively. Those two things are very, very interesting. I think driver safety is an interesting one. As I said before, tachographs, when they were first introduced, were definitely opposed by drivers. Now, I don't think a driver will get into a cab without one. And I hope that AI and cameras are going to be understood in a way that they are going to save lives, not there to beat people over the head. And I really do believe that's true. And I hope that the unions will get on board with that, because I know talking to Unite sometimes they're not keen on the idea of driver-facing cameras. And I really think they should be seen as a safety aid, not as a management tool. So that's very interesting. 71% of people talking about optimising route planning, and 72% driver safety and behaviour analysis. So that's very encouraging. I think those are the two main areas. Just genuinely reducing operating costs, very, very interesting. That's also over half. So that's brilliant. Thank you very much indeed to anyone who was listening, and I hope you found it interesting. And I'll now wrap up and say thank you very much indeed to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.